PlayStation 5 heatsink?
Patents.
Hello and welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast, and yet another episode involving patents. We're not going to be crazy on it, but patents. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as always, Mr.
Saul Bridges, bringing you guys episode 160.
160. Woo! All right.
We up there.
If you've never checked the show out, of course, we give the big spiel at the end of the show these days. So stick around for that if you want to see where you can find us and what we're all about and how you could support the show further. But starting the show off the right way, as is deemed necessary by tradition. Also, I'm not a stickler for tradition. I just happen to really like this one. So, Saul, I've actually spoke with you a bunch this week, which is a little uncommon.
We see each other at work almost every day now.
Definitely recently, though.
Yeah.
So that's the one plus side to the downside of my thing. I was like, oh, at least I get to talk to Saul a little bit more.
That's true.
But what have you been playing and up to if it's not just been one thing? You beat the game that I know you're talking about well before I did. So
yeah, I beat Remake. I think we talked about that last episode.
I think you had already beaten it last episode, and
I can't remember. Right. I can't remember if I said that or not. So Remake's beaten. I had an extreme desire to go back and play the original 7, which I kind of started and I've kind of been piddling on a little bit. But I also started 9, which I played like the first 45 minutes of, but when it came out on PS4. And so now I'm about...
Well, hold on. You bought it back when it came out? I forgot about that.
Yeah, I got all the way up to the play sequence, and then...
I thought you had recently rebought it, but now that I'm thinking about what you said, yeah, you had said that you got to the play and stopped.
So now I've gotten all the way up to the part where you get to the evil forest, and then Garnet is captured by that weird plant thing that has her in a cage.
Yeah, you're still not very far.
No, yeah. And I beat that, and then I saved after I beat that.
Boy, that's a game that I really do need to replay, because it's crazy how much you think you can remember something until you're playing it again, and then you start to remember it while you're playing it.
Well, people really criticized the art style in this game and said the art style wasn't really remade, but I disagree. The character models look really good, and what they were really pertaining to were the backgrounds. And I think the backgrounds weren't really touched upon, but it's still kind of nostalgic to see that kind of background art and the new kind of characters. I kind of dig it.
Well, here's the bigger question, because of course I've not seen the PS4 version of 9, but I thought of the 3 PlayStation ones,
and I've been playing on Switch, by the way.
Of the 3 PS1 versions, 9 actually looked the best.
It does.
It does the best, and I mean, of course it should, being the last one, but it does the best job of pulling in the static backgrounds of 7 that you also kind of go on to see in 10.
Yes.
And having now 10, of course, it looks far more blended with the world than both 7 and 9s do. But I thought 9 did a much better job of 7 at making your character look more in line with the static backgrounds than 7. 7, you pop too much, and the weird shaping makes it hard. But every character in 9, while having that little bit of a chibi effect, they look more like a real character, more like 8. 8 was more like, we're going to try and do most of it in 3D.
Yeah.
9's going to go back
8's
to a little bit more
remaster looks really good.
Yeah. 7's remaster. Haven't played it. Did it update the static backgrounds?
No.
I didn't think so. So why would you expect that in 9?
If they did anything, they made like doors, like specifically doors, more visible. Or maybe it's just that I knew where they all were. It still has that weird thing where some screens are transitioning on weird spaces on the left and right, and it's hard to find those sometimes.
Yep.
But so I played that. It's actually I downloaded that on Switch on Monday or Tuesday, and I've been playing that since. And I decided to go ahead and download Final Fantasy 8 and Final Fantasy 10 on Switch. So now I have Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and 10 and 12 all on Switch. So I thought that was kind of cool. But
is your goal to like play through all of them back to back, or just have them interspersed between other games?
Kind of interspersed in between each other. I actually started up 10, and then I was like, I don't really feel like playing this right now.
I think you're starting too many Final Fantasy games at once.
I am.
I didn't even think about it. If you wanted to play Final Fantasy 6, I have it, so I guess technically you could play it whenever you borrow the Vita.
I do want to do that really badly.
Yeah.
Also, something that's cool, we keep talking about Biggs and Wedge. I don't know if you remember Final Fantasy 6 in the intro, when you are walking through the snow and the mechs, the 2 people with you are Biggs and Wedge. They're the first. Yeah. I think they're the first iteration of Biggs and Wedge in a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I forgot about that.
But
Man, that's an opening right there.
It is. I love that opening. That's actually, I will say that's the best Final Fantasy opening there is.
I like how somber the majority of it is. Like even once you get into the town,
Yeah,
and you're kind of waking up and everything's happening.
that story, that game had a really cool story to me too. Yesterday though, I sat down, started recording Bloodborne Saw plays at 5:17, and it's all screwed. This is what I mentioned to you on Discord. So I told everybody on Discord this happened. Friday, I got home. I finally got my mic back from Seth on Friday. I set it all up, and I pulled everything up, and I looked at it on my computer, and I did audio tests to make sure that the game versus my voice versus... I even went all the way to Gas 1 to fight him to see if the music flare-up would drown me out, because I actually had that problem in Dark Souls 3. Perfect. Started playing yesterday at 5:15, took a break and grabbed a sandwich at like around 1, and I finished up around 3:15 to 3:30ish. None of that recorded at all. The only thing I have is a single video that is corrupted. There's no audio. There's no intro to Saw Plays. Nothing at all. So I spent from about 3:30 to 6:30 yesterday
trying to figure it out,
troubleshooting this.
Oh man.
I have gathered that either my PS4 is not communicating with my Elgato properly and it's not recording.
You have HDCP off?
Yes. You actually, as a matter of fact, you when you have that on, I don't even think you can pull up the screen.
I think you're right.
In the thing.
Yeah.
You
know what it could have been? And I know this sounds weird. You know the HDCP protocol was just updated.
Possibly. I don't know. Would they have stopped that from working then?
I don't think so, because if you're turning it off, it shouldn't matter. But hey, we're not here to live troubleshoot. Sorry.
Yeah.
We can talk more about it later if you haven't already figured it out.
But no, I haven't. But I figured out that either my Elgato's dead, it won't record, but it'll let me stream, which is weird because it streams on my computer perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Or that something went wrong in the recording and coding process to my PC. One of the things I did was I tried it on my laptop, did the same thing. I tried it on Annie's PS4, did the same thing. So it is not with a laptop. So it's either a combination of my PS4 and the PC, or it's a combination of that or it's just the capture card being dead. Unfortunately, there is nowhere that can get me a capture card fast enough to hit my deadline.
So it's just not going to happen.
It's just not going to happen right now. That really, like I told Josh in Discord yesterday, I was like, I just need some mashed potatoes and some fried chicken right now because I was so done.
Is that your comfort food?
Yes. One thing I really like about having the weekends off is I have 2 consistent days and I'm off, and I just wasted 1. And I was just, I literally, and I even bought a 10-foot HDMI cable because where it's all set up.
Okay, that might have introduced
that's
some
not,
problems.
Nope.
Good.
I tried different HDMI cables. I went to my laptop. So
and
I don't know
you're
what
not
it
using
is.
an overly long USB micro, right?
No.
Good.
No, it's the one that it came with. Good. And I even tried another one. Still, nothing's working. I looked on Best Buy. Best Buy was like May 22nd. I think it could get me one. Amazon, there was only 2 sellers that had one. One was like May 15th, and one was currently unavailable. So I'm not even going to worry about it from right now. So I apologize for everybody looking at it. I'm going to delete the teaser off YouTube. I don't even want to talk about it because I literally... And what's funny is I almost put it in Discord, but I just didn't even want to see it because it pissed me off. That character that I have that I was playing on in the Let's Play, I had this funny moment of like very, very quickly running away because I forgot that if you start the final boss fight, you can't go to New Game Plus in Bloodborne. So I was doing this thing and you can't go back to the DLC either until you beat Amelia in the next playthrough. And I wasn't going to do all that for this.
Oh yeah.
So I was showing them off the arena. And I was like, let me go show you who this is up here. Because, Gurman's sitting up there in the arena. And then I was like, I hit an X talking to him. I'm like, oh, whoops. And I thought I was going to trigger the cutscene because then it popped up saying make decision. And that's where you can either fight him or he kills you. And I was like, and then the Let's Play, I was like,
maybe we shouldn't be spoiling Bloodborne, but here we are.
Oh, yeah, here we are. So I was like, I don't know if I need to press a button or just run away. And thankfully, running away from him made the dialogue box go away and nothing happened. Okay. But I almost ruined the Let's Play that was already ruined because I did all the bosses up until the final one. And then I was going to go to the DLC and do all of the DLC. And then, actually, what's funny, I was going to edit in a montage because I only died five times throughout this entire thing until one boss. And I've been through the DLC twice now, just trying to make a run out of it. And it's Ludwig. And he killed me probably 10 times. And I was going to make a montage of me dying to cut down the footage, but lo and behold, it's not there. I was actually gonna put some fun editing into this one, and now that it, and I just told Josh that I'm not even gonna worry about it. Like I when you work on something for so long and it just falls down, you're just like, I'm not touching that thing for a while.
Oh yeah,
that's how I feel.
I definitely understand that.
I just know I don't want to do it anymore. But enough ranting. I apologize for everybody who got excited for that. Saw Plays for Bloodborne won't be happening right now. That is the next. I have decided though that if I go back, that is probably the next game I will do to keep it consistent up.
Can I corner you into a decision right now and see if we're going to lock down on a Final Fantasy VII remake impressions episode?
We could do that sometime this week.
Okay.
I just got to figure out what day. Work with me and depending on like what I'm doing throughout the week.
Well, I can go ahead and tell you Monday and Wednesday won't work for me.
Well, at least Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Maybe no Friday. This is Andy's weekend off
because I'm doing other stuff, but it's Tuesday recording and podcasting. So sadly, anyway, we'll figure that out. And look, there you go. That sounds like a probably from Saul, but a couple of people have asked and mentioned, "Hey, are y'all planning on doing an impressions?" And it's a good time to bring it back for a game that has a lot of talk around it.
Yeah, and I really just want to talk about this game now that you've beaten it.
And now that we can openly talk about it.
Yeah.
So, for sure.
But what have you been playing? Speaking of remake, I'm sure.
Mine is a remake, of course. I get very single-minded, so I started remake and didn't play anything else throughout the entirety of playing remake. I was a little surprised that it actually did. I hit the 40-hour mark.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what mine was.
I guess because I did all the side quests, but
I think it was, I did it too, except one in the last area, and I was at 36.
Yeah. Well, I say I hit the 40. I know I was close, so my mind just kind of ups, but it was at least 38. Now
you also had a lot of trouble with Sephiroth.
And I told you why. And actually, I'll go ahead and say that's one of the things that to me is bad game design. And I'm not throwing it only on that game. There's a lot of games that do this, but the problem I have with the game is that during the final boss fight, it would constantly do these transition scenes where where you get knocked to another building, and you never knew I guess you could really, if you just did the fight enough times, you could pick up on exactly when it's going to do it. But sometimes it would do it even erratically. I thought I knew when it was coming, so I would do my limit, thinking I had the ability to do it,
and then cutscene.
And then it would do a transition scene, waste my limit. I'd start to do cure, and it would spin my ATB bar, and sometimes even my MP, and then bam, magically. I didn't even get cured. And then the bigger thing I had that I really hate in games like this, and I hate it in all games. I hate it in games where they block off the ability to do damage based off of needing to move you through phases.
Yeah.
It's a problem that Anthem, Destiny, a bunch of games have that I really can't stand, is when you're doing too much damage in the section. So once you hit the damage cap for that area, any more damage that would have happened with like a limit. One time my limit went all the way through technically, but because the game was slow to transition, Sephiroth was just standing there. I shouldn't say the name, but you already said it.
I already said it, and I was sitting there thinking, like, are we gonna have to edit this video?
Final boss was standing there, and I was hitting him with the limit and doing no damage, and I hate that. To me, that's all things that there should never be a time where you're in the middle of a boss fight and these things happen. And then what makes it worse is when you're going to redo the boss fight, every time these things happen, you have to wait for these dumb cutscenes that you can't skip.
Yeah.
So and it's funny. The first time I went to the thing, I almost beat it.
I
had one hit left on him. I screwed up. It's fine.
That's exactly how I did beat the final boss. Was that
frustration
I had
what
like
gets you.
A hit or maybe 2 hits left on me, and it was funny that I was like, I didn't even realize what I was doing, but I was Aerith, and I was casting a Phoenix down on Cloud because Barrett and Cloud were both dead. And no, I'm sorry, I was Tifa doing this.
I was about to say, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's not to speak of that. But then I was like, okay, I casted the Phoenix down. Let me run over there and punch him a couple times so that my ATB bar gets up, and I just killed him. But I did not realize that when he hit me, it did the thing that I told was irritating where my ATB bar was gone, so I never used Phoenix down on Cloud. So it was but I killed him. It was just me going over there, absentmindedly, not realizing that everybody's still dead. I'm almost dead, and I'm just trying to go over there real quick to get a quick heal into Cloud.
Yeah.
That's not alive.
Yeah.
And it did the thing like what I like in this game when you beat a boss. It does like this weird camera sweep to like the boss in slow motion. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize I was about to beat him.
That happened to me twice, though, of letting frustration around the situation keep me from going further. The first time that I failed at the dogs that I was talking about in Discord, and
yeah, that part was annoying.
That whole day I was just kind of tired and was getting ready to quit playing, and then that kind of just made me want to stop playing.
Yeah.
The next day, first try, I did it. I didn't even change anything I was doing.
I tell you, that's how it was with another boss for me, the Chariot boss.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, oh, hey, look, I'm going to stop playing this for that night. And then I went back like 3 days later and I beat him on my first try. I was like, oh, there we go.
It reminds me of PS3 era whenever Seth was over, actually, and I was playing Heavenly Sword, and I just kept losing at the end. And I kept getting beat right at the very end. And I was getting so mad that there's something that's funny about getting mad when you're playing a video game, because for some reason you feel like you're supposed to be doing better. You're like, yeah, this anger is going towards making me better. And it's not at all. Or at least for me, it's not. It's very rare that I get annoyed and actually end up doing better or beating it. Normally, the more annoyed I get, and every fail that comes, I just get more and more annoyed, and I just go, I
don't think
I have to quit.
That doesn't work with me.
The funny thing about Heavenly Sword is I put that game down after that, and then something else came out, and I started playing that. I didn't play it for almost 6 months. Put it back in one day, beat the boss first try, and I hadn't even played the game.
That's happened to me a couple times.
Made me upset. But since then, the thing about playing Remake is there was a couple of scenes.
Hey, let's save this for the impressions.
Well, I'm not saying it's just there's a couple of scenes within Remake that made me super nostalgic towards Crisis Core.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I went toward and pulled my Vita out and through some magic was playing Crisis Core on there. And man, that game is so good. The crazy thing about Crisis Core is like going through. I didn't even think about it, dude. Crisis Core came out not exactly, but pretty much 10 years after Final Fantasy VII, and it's amazing how much different the games are. It's like, Crisis Core isn't fully voice acted. Did that game really
come out 2006?
2007.
Even then.
And Final Fantasy originally was 97. Final Fantasy VII was 97. Sorry. Okay. And Crisis Core was 2007 in Japan. It didn't come out for us until 2008.
Okay.
April, March, something like that.
I think I played that later.
Fun story, back when Crisis Core first came out, I played it and had very little clue of what was going on, because I played it and I didn't beat it. I got pretty far. I got about probably 75% through the game in Japanese. Very little. I didn't know what I was doing. So, you're just rolling with it and learning by...
And then a cutscene happens. You're like, oh, this is the right way.
Yeah, and you're like, figured it out. And of course, you can figure out your materia by just equipping it and then going through and using it and be like, okay, that's what that is. But then I played the real game. So either way, what I love about Crisis Core is the surprising part is going through and playing it right after 7, everything feels directly like in line with what I just played.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me. Besides, and I'll go ahead and shout it out, the new voice cast did fine. I prefer the original voice cast for pretty much every character, if I'm being honest. Aerith is the only one I'm a little bit teetering on, but I think some of that's the way they chose to write her. For some reason, I know that in Kingdom Hearts and in the original 7, I always took her as really conservative and just like kind of, oh, I'm Aerith.
Yeah, no, that's not.
And
not the
in
thing.
Crisis Core and in 7 Remake, she's got a lot more spunk to her. Yeah, like she's still sweet and kind of soft.
Aerith said shit. I was like, "What is this? That's illegal."
Yeah. So either way, I really enjoy the voice acting cast for the original game, or for a lot of the characters that they started doing once voices were added. And I'm a little upset that none of them made it back around. But that's just, it is what it is. So I am enjoying that. I beat 7 Remake yesterday morning, first thing I did, and then I immediately played Crisis Core for 7 hours. I mowed the yard and did some stuff that I needed to do, and then played Crisis Core for 7 hours.
So good. I was by sleep. Telling you, that's the only game I've ever started in one sitting. Like when I first started the game, and then I immediately went all the way through the entire game with like a little bit of sleep in between.
Yeah. The crazy thing about do you remember I started Crisis Core about 6 months ago?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't get very far. There's other stuff
longer
going
than
on.
that. It was longer than that because it was when you first did the magical thing.
Yeah. I don't know.
Probably
8 months ago, maybe a year ago. I could probably go through and look at my camera. But it's funny that I love the game. And now that I'm playing through it and I've gotten much further, again, I'm even more reminded of how much I love the game. I haven't played it through all the way since it came out, 2008. And that's wild how much of it I do remember, and there's also wild how much of it I didn't remember.
I think I did because I remember I had it on UMD, and then I had the Pandora Radio PSP that I had it on. So I think I've done it twice now.
Yeah, I just haven't played it since then because of time.
I fairly remember more of that game than I do the original 7. Like there's little smaller details in Crisis Core that I remember way more than I do in 7.
So I may be saying something that's blasphemous. As a whole, from my memory and what I've played so far, I think I still like Crisis Core more than 7 Remake. And I'm not saying that as a stand on the quality. I think it's just for some reason there's something about Crisis Core that has always hit me. I liked Crisis Core more than the original 7. I like it more than 7 Remake so far.
There's stuff that Crisis Core does in relation to 7, direct relation, when you go to a certain city that you can actually play through. That was really cool. I think that there's a part in the later game that I didn't like that much. It's funny because I was talking about a location, Costa del Sol, in that game that I was like, That whole scene, like that whole area, like with the beach and everything, was kind of bland, and even the Wutai stuff in the very beginning with Yuffie was kind of cool visually, but kind of bland.
Yeah.
But overall, like I have to simmer on this a little bit more because I actually would probably agree with you.
My bigger thing is I'm so impressed at how good a PSP game looks this long down the line, and even more so just because I was curious.
That could very well be a Vita game.
Curiosity strikes, and it's funny. That's an early PSP game. Yeah. 2007 is first 2-3 years of PSP.
3 years, right?
Yeah, 3. 2004 in Japan, and I can't remember. I think it was 2005 here. I can't remember. I think it was Christmas 04 here that it came out. Either way, I put it on the PC just to see what it looked like in 4K, because you can render it at 4K, even though the text... Well, actually, that's what's great about doing games like that and rendering them in 4K is you can see it doesn't change the textures, but it will sometimes bring out the definition that the textures didn't originally have because the game couldn't actually compute them out the way that they should. Crisis Core looks really good. Like, it still looks like an early PS3 game, I guess I'd say, all things considered. But there's so much emotion and like movement in the eyes and stuff.
I would say you could pass that as a Vita game.
What's crazy is that there's parts. You know how in Kingdom Hearts 1, 2002, right, on PS2, in Kingdom Hearts, you had it's a testament to how much the PSP looked like a PS2 that's portable. Now, of course, it was half the resolution. I guess technically 4 times under. Well, not 4 times. It was half because it's 480p for PS2. But in Kingdom Hearts 1, one of the things that always struck me is like, wow, that's so detailed. Is the scenes when it would switch over to Sora and Riku's face, and if it actually got close and they were fully animated lips and eyes, and they looked so good in comparison to 10, which came out just a year before, that never really had.
Yeah, 10's.
I mean, it had moments, but a lot of 10 stuff was pre-rendered cutscenes.
Well, 10 I noticed it yesterday. 10 has that thing where it's badly. Not translated, but it's badly animated for translation because they'll stop their sentence and their mouth will move for like 3 more seconds.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about Kingdom Hearts back in the day is I always loved how well the lip syncing worked when it was a fully lip sync thing. Now, of course, when the camera's far away from you in Kingdom Hearts 1, you'll occasionally see the mouth is just a flap. But it's still moving in time with how it should, within reason. But yeah, that's the crazy thing about this game is that in certain times, it looks like the best parts of Kingdom Hearts 1, and this was on a PSP. So a portable PS2. And I shout out to Sony for making just such amazing handhelds. And I mean, I'll give a shout out to the Switch now, but I feel like for a long time, Nintendo was far behind what a handheld could realistically do. And now they're there, thankfully. But it just makes me long to be able to play Crisis Core with trophy support, because there's something about that game that just makes me want to play it all. I've been doing all the side missions, rolling through, so, I'm not as far in the story as I could have been if I wasn't doing all the extra stuff, but it's been fun, and I enjoy it. And it's a fantastic game that I'm so excited to be playing again. But I think it is time for us to move on to the community stake before we hop into the news. Thanks for listening to us rumble on about RPGs. If you hate JRPGs, then you have just suffered through a beginning of an episode. But that's just what we happen to be on right now for some reason. So community stake question from last week was in discussion to PlayStation 5 going to have less units overall than what the PS4 was aiming for. Now, we've had a little bit of context added to some of that, and I think that is important to bring up over on our Discord. So people were talking about actually that through, Sony had sold through 7 million PS4s in, I think, a 6-month period. Yeah, from December to May 14th of 14. So their number is not that much more shallow, but I think the reason, and we didn't do a great job of vocalizing that, but I know for me, I can't speak for Saul, but for me, to me, it's that when the PS4 was hitting, there was a lot of doom and gloom around consoles, and there was no reason for Sony to believe that 7 million PS4s would move that quickly. Now, with the gaming landscape being bigger than it's ever been, and I think even like we talked about the remark from Jim Ryan that he wanted to move PS5s at an unprecedented rate, I think up until the pandemic hit, they were intending for, because gaming has seemingly grown so much, and in a way it has, in a way it hasn't. It's weird, you don't think about it that way, but with gaming growing so much, you'd think that Sony, after a big thing like this, would want to come out of the gate with even more units so that they could have the potential to push through them, but this definitely seems like a change of plans, and I don't necessarily think it means that there's going to be not enough, though it could happen. But it's just interesting. You know, the reason I said that it's like gaming has grown, but it's really not in a way, is that both PS4 and PS3 and Xbox 360 sold roughly 80 million units, right? A little bit more. So that's 160 million. You take into the Wii and you put the Wii in that, you're talking over 100 million units on its own. So you're talking 260 million consoles for that generation alone. Well, if you really look at this generation, the PlayStation 4 is at like 120 million or whatever it's going to be. It's at least over 100 million, but the Xbox is only around 50. So realistically,
Well, Switch.
And the Switch is really high. So, but my point is that so far with where we're at in the generations, this is really not that different from a sheer number standpoint than what we had back then. But there was a lot of things to change those numbers. There was Red Rings of Death problems, people not even sending them for free and just buying new ones. There's a lot of things that inflated console sales at that point in time. And even though the Wii sold a bunch, it had a very bad attach rate. Nobody bought games for it. So there's a lot of contextual information that I think changes some of that up. And I do think gaming as a whole has grown, even if you do begrudgingly. I mean, I don't care, but if you're one of the people that begrudgingly has to include mobile gaming in that, it's still gaming, and it still does mean that there are people who may start mobile gaming and end up on consoles or PC.
Yeah.
So it's still part of the gaming market. And that's not even to say that PC has grown so much. I mean, PC has really had a big comeback in interest. So, that's just a little bit of on there. But, Saul, if you want to add anything to that, but I'm about to.
Yeah, we can go to community state.
Okay, go ahead and hit into that. Over on Discord, we had the question, which. Let me see where I'm at. Okay, here we go. Community stake was update on a question we've asked before, but with new context. With Sony aiming to make less PS5s for launch, how many of you are aiming to get a PS5 day one? Is the cost of $500 or potentially more a deciding factor in you not getting one at launch, as Sony is anticipating? And I was a little surprised, at least within the people that we talk with on a pretty regular basis. Seems like most people are really for getting one day one, or at least close to launch. So we have Atlas Unchained, one of our friends and patrons. He says, I will be getting one as soon as I'm able to. Hopefully that's launch day, but if there's some shortage, I won't really have a choice but to wait. At $550 hypothetically, it is pushing it, but this is a console I'll be getting years of entertainment from, so it's reasonable in my opinion. And I definitely, I view that as well. I know that at the time I was poor, and the $600 price point of the PS3 was insanity.
Oh, yeah. Even to this day, that's still insanity.
And I know it is, but the crazy thing is my original PS3 that was $600 is sitting right in there. Still works to this day, and I played it for the entirety of the generation. So much like everyone else, the $600 becomes this thing of like, that's probably the best $600 one of the best $600 I've spent.
That's true, yeah. And that's, when you think about it, let's say the PS5's life cycle is only 5 years. Mm-hmm. Shortest life cycle in a while. That's still only like $110 every 5 years you play that thing for $550.
Yeah.
So it's still a good deal.
Yeah.
Dennis on Twitter said, I don't mind a $500 price tag, but will more than likely wait a few months to get one. With my wife and I having our first kid in late October, I doubt I'll be able to get one anyways. Congratulations, Dennis, on your very first child.
And this is Mr. Kevin Bacon Bits, our new patron.
Oh, cool. I did not know that.
So apparently he'd been listening to the show.
If I paid attention to his Twitter handle, then yeah.
But he's been listening to the show for about a year and said he figured to finally time to become a patron. So really, we appreciate you. I know we just had that earlier this morning, but that's awesome, and we really appreciate it.
And congratulations on you and your child and your wife as well. And I hope everything works out well with that. Everybody stays healthy.
With the economy potentially taking a hit, but even then, just how much time and effort and money goes into a baby. I understand why people who are having kids right now who are gamers are probably like, there's a chance I'll have to hold on to the PS4 for a little longer.
There's a chance I'll have to hold off on the baby for a little longer. I'm like, how does that work?
If only, right? Baby, could you just stay in there for a little bit while I beat Cyberpunk?
Wow. Jason on Twitter, Jason G says, I plan on getting it day one, and I was planning to prepare $500 for it. I can't believe it costing any less than that. I'd be okay with just one game for it upon release, and give me one game upon release and I'm there. All this will happen. I should be able to talk. If all this is to happen, I should be able to make a pre-order, of course. Which that's kind of my thing. I am kind of curious as to how easy a pre-order would be. I'm not playing the pre-order game if I have to wait a month or two after release to get one. Mm-hmm. I don't really care.
Well, and here's a big question that comes from this. What if they open up pre-orders, right? And they don't put a cap on pre-orders. Let's just say that that's how that happens. Do you think that there's a chance they open up pre-orders and see what the day one pre-orders just look like? And then from there, they may adjust their...
I'm sure it's going to be done over time. I don't think it'll be just like one and done.
Well, what I mean by that is, like, do you think that there's a chance that pre-orders could be high enough to sway Sony from their current projection and current number that they anticipate making, to where if pre-order interest is super high, do you think they go back and go, you know what, maybe we make 7 million?
They'll have to open up pre-orders a lot earlier to make an extra 100 million consoles. I mean, 100 million.
Well, I agree with that, but let's just say they open it up in... That's going to be weird.
Because they'd have to open up like May, right? Yeah. To prepare for a 1 million more consoles?
Well, and May is currently rumored on both sides, though. So maybe
there's
more to it.
Is that an Xbox thing, or is that a PlayStation and Xbox thing?
Both. There's rumors that Xbox is going to reveal its Series S, and that PlayStation will be showing off its console. Rumors. You don't know.
Maybe we can get one on my birthday.
But let's just say, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? But let's just say
I won't forget that date.
May is going to be when they announce it and when they open up pre-orders. From May to when they anticipated opening June, if there's a high enough volume of pre-orders in that time, do you think that they could go back? I think that it'd be reasonable and smart to look and go, you know, there's way more interest than we anticipated. But I don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Jason does head over to Discord as well and put a little bit more to his answer. He said when PS4 released, he grabbed Black Flag and was more than happy with that as tying back into his one game remark. And he said, if an AC game released alongside a PS5, I am sold. So... I think there's a good chance for that. There's been some, again, rumors, but I think it makes sense because of where the games have been. I think it makes sense for AC Ragnarok to be at the reveal if it's going to be somewhere around that launch, somewhere around a launch title. I anticipate it being a cross-gen title,
of course, yeah,
but still,
with it being a yearly release game. Ashley on Twitter says, "I'll wait till the price drops," which is always a sensible thing to do.
I mean, I agree. Honestly, don't get me wrong. I think it's how much money or how much disposable income do you have versus how much you like the hobby, with the added in aspect of how much more do you think the PS4 can offer you in the time between you deciding to buy the PS5. If honestly you think you have a lot more value in the PS4 left to be had, then, and you're not just necessarily in a hurry and don't have necessarily the disposable income or could use it somewhere else, it makes sense to hold off.
Well, in the same responsible vein, that for that mindset, Deadhead on Twitter says, "I'm not too worried about it. Usually day one technology has a lot of problems. I'll wait till the second model is released or price drops," which is still very sensible.
It is. And I think that the red rings that we talked about earlier were a huge impact in people being a little more weary about buying stuff day
Absolutely. One. Yeah, absolutely. I fully, for a purchase that's going to cost upwards of $600 after taxes, then it makes total sense to go ahead and wait on it. At least 6 months, I think is a safe area for me, but for people who wait a year or 2 years and they classify themselves as a patient gamer, even better, because for sure you're going to get a good deal with probably a good bundle. You're going to be able to play all these games that have come out, and you're not waiting for release upon release, kind of like we are now in this realm. Like, I'm done with 7. What else is there for me? I'm kind of just waiting
until The Last of Us 2 manages to show its head.
And see, so this is, it's a very, you never hurt yourself from waiting for an outcome like this.
I think that's true. Now, I do think that if I had cared enough to be a big on Xbox. You know, when we got a 360, it was me and my brothers both. And when we got a PS3, it was mine only. There was a big deal about that, you know, because I was the one, and we had a little bit more money, thankfully, at that point in our life. And my brother kept the Xbox and moved on, and I didn't care to keep playing it.
It's kind of how me and Seth did in a way, but except it's kind of like Seth had the PS3, that was his.
Mm-hmm, and you had the 360.
And I had the 360, and that was mine. But then Seth would leave the PS3 at home when he would live with you, and I'd be like, okay, cool. That's where I got to play Demon's Souls and Metal Gear Solid 4. You just never had it.
So on stuff like that, I got to say, I wouldn't even say I've been lucky. I think Sony have done a fantastic job at always making sure their day one stuff works. And up until my brother, I don't even know exactly what happened with it, and I don't even want to think about it too much, but up until my PS2 got taken, I had an original fat PS2 that was my original one from when we were a kid, and it even had the hard drive attachment on the back for using to play games like Final Fantasy 11 online, where you added a hard drive in because the game was too big, and it had the Ethernet connector and all that stuff on it. But I had that up until I was already in this house, so it's been about 3 or 4 years ago that's been missing. But I still have my original PS1. I still have my original launch model had my original launch model PS2. I still have a launch model PSP. I just recently switched the frame out for Kyrie. Did. I have my launch model Vita, or a launch model Vita, and I have the launch model PS4 still. I don't have. I've either been incredibly lucky, but really I think it's that Sony makes a really great product. And I'd even go as far as to say that most companies do now. But a recent example that does throw kind of a good reason to heed that kind of stuff is like the Switch. And it's not the Switch is just a complete wreck of a system or anything like that, but things like Joy-Con drift are something that's good to know before you make the conscious decision to buy it.
Yeah, and honestly, I've made a kind of a conscious decision myself in a very similar realm, and that's with phones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to iPhone and trying this out. Well, the thing is that I could have waited till September and gotten the iPhone 12 or whatever is going to come out, but with some phones that come out, like what was it, the Note 8 that was exploding?
The
7. Because I know they skipped one. I think that's what it was. They skipped one and went to 9. I don't think they had a Note 8, did they?
They did. They didn't have
Did they skip the number?
They didn't have a Note 6, I think.
Well, the Note 6 was the exploding one then, wasn't it?
No, the Note 7, because they skipped Note 6 and did the Note 7 at the same time as the S7. What they wanted to do was get parity on the Note line
weird.
And that's normal.
That's what you get
Galaxy.
Samsung for exploding phones. But then you have so many phones come out with software issues and hardware issues that you're not expected for. I'm fully fine with having an iPhone for a year before I upgrade to a new one. Mm-hmm. It gives everything a year of like, hey, like this is worth, upgrading now. And I think me and Brett are the only people that we know personally that upgrade phones as much as we do. I've had this Note 9 for a year and a month, and this is the longest I've held a phone for a while.
You upgrade phones way more than I do.
Kind
of. And I still upgrade phones more than most people.
Yeah.
And that we know.
And people like Sean, he'll say, that's stupid. It's like, maybe for you, but like this is something in my pocket that I have every day, always with me, that I use and consume media, videos, everything.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep whatever this is in good shape. I want it to work well. If it doesn't work well, it's impacting something of my life that I don't want to be impacted negatively, so I'll change.
Now, one thing I can do that technically puts me up with you.
Don't do Samsung. This phone's crap.
Is I have a work phone. And my work phone gets updated intermittently as well.
Yeah.
So technically, I do upgrade phones as much as you. But
well, not only that, you could decide to go one route with, like, say you want to upgrade to the S20 Ultra or something from Samsung on that line, and then on your line, say I'm gonna go with the OnePlus 8 Pro.
That's true, and that's actually what I did when I got my work phone S10. I was like, I'll try it. I mean, it's okay. I like my OnePlus 6T a lot more, and that's funny because it's older.
I still to this day, I will unlock my phone and it will just be dim. And I'm like, why is this dim? Because it matches this current brightness of my lock screen, and it makes me angry so bad.
Yeah, but that's a good point, because like even things like the Google Pixel 4 had some issues.
Google Pixel 4 came out with issues,
and a lot of it was like the screen would get stuck, and you'd have to lock it and unlock it for it to unstick.
The Google Pixel had issues when it came out, or the Pixel 4 had issues when it came out. The Pixel 3 had issues when it came out.
There is
a couple of the Samsung phones. I think the Samsung
technology.
The Note, no, not the Note 10. The S10 had some issues when it first came out.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Also, Richard, don't make fun of me for switching to iPhone. I'll do what I want to do, boy. Like, if you really want me to, I'll show you fanboyism. I'll get that Apple Pencil and use it on my phone nonstop.
A new face over in the Discord, True. He says, at this
what's up,
point,
buddy?
a $500 price point is a little bit of a turnoff, but I'm still probably going to try and get one day one. These next few months will be the biggest deciding factor. Knowing launch titles and price point is going to be my bottom line. And I do think that that's what I expected more about this question is you anticipate getting it day one, but that can always change based off of launch titles.
Was I missing that or no?
No, you weren't. But yeah, it's I get it. When you don't even know how much it costs or what your launch titles are going to be, it is hard to make a definitive decision. I think the only reason that some people can make a little bit more of a decision this early ahead is because backwards compatibility.
Yeah, and see, this is, I said this last episode, or maybe the episode before that, is that I wish we had a game that we were playing multiplayer. Because right now, there's really nothing for me to play. And that's why I'm kind of going back to Final Fantasy IX right now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, well, when the PS5 comes out, I'm already going to beat Last of Us. I'm already going to have beaten Ghost of Tsushima. What launch games are they going to give me to play? And if I beat that launch game within a month, what's left? Because now I'm not playing it on my PS4 right now. So that backwards compatibility will be nice, but I won't be playing anything or looking forward to anything. So it kind of becomes this thing of like the first month, unless it has like 2 or 3 really strong launch games or crossover generation games, then I'm going to kind of be in the same pickle that I'm in now where games are taking a little while to produce. So even if I do, that's why I don't really mind if I have to wait because I don't get a pre-order. It's not a big deal.
And something small, like if Fallout 76 goes down to $5 again, you can try your hand at a couple of games that are going to be like that. Because like Destiny, if you ever got really hard back into Destiny, you'd be able to transition that up with you and just have the benefits of playing it on the better console. But you're right, backwards compatibility matters less when it's part of it's a problem with us is that we play stuff, a little too quickly. Like we get stuff as soon as it comes out.
That. Like I beat 7 Remake in 2 weeks after it came out.
Yeah, and actually I did too. Donovan was like, "Man, you beat that quick." I was like, "Really? I didn't."
Well, you beat it 3 weeks.
Well, I mean, technically, I guess, but I didn't even get it until the Tuesday following its release.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right. So technically for you.
Yeah, weird time. But, do a couple more over here. Mr. Luke Rabbit says, I'm going to wait myself, probably until some of the first major exclusives are released or the price goes down in a couple years. I'm more of a patient gamer, though. I've also spent a decent amount on building a PC recently, which I feel might hold me over for a while. Still very excited about PS5. If I wasn't a patient gamer, then I'd say $500 or less. Beyond $500 feels, for me personally, a little steep. Another factor here is that we're in the weird situation with the pandemic pushing us into a recession, or at the very least not helping keep us from one. With people out of work and a slower economy, I fear that might create hesitancy to purchase anything over $500, forcing people to wait longer to get into the next generation. Something I've been thinking about and worry about if price is too high. Interesting to hear your thoughts on that as well. The next generation might, in fact, be a pretty slow start for the first year or more, perhaps. I do think that the PS3 generation that I just talked about, hitting 80 million units both on both systems, it was kind of amazing considering that the financial collapse of 2008 happened.
Yeah, and it's kind of all insane. Like people said history repeats itself, and it really does, because it's been 12 years since that happened, also around the presidential election, also around new consoles coming out. Yeah. So it's kind of weird.
Not too far, yeah, because Xbox 360 was 2005 and PlayStation was November 6. Yeah. So I guess he was 2 years after, but that's still close enough to
That's close enough in the grand scheme of things.
And that was a long generation. So if you think about it, it's more front-loaded. Yeah, I think price is going to play a big point based off the economy, but I'm hesitant because it's not like I know that much about the economy. I'm hesitant to say exactly what the impact of this is going to be, partially because I think the impact is going to be lopsided. I don't think certain people are not having any problems with money right now, and honestly, I'm thankfully on the side of having less issues. My wife has no income, and sadly, unemployment has not been of any kind of help to us, and we've been trying to deal with it for a month and a week and gotten nowhere. I think we may have just gotten something of understanding of what's going to happen, but even then, I'm not struggling for money, thankfully. So it's going to be one of those things where certain people are, certain industries that were forced to close, and then other people are weirdly going to end up be okay as well, like people who are these essential workers. They have a steady stream of income. It's odd. I don't know.
Speaking of money, do you want to go get food after this, or do you have plans?
I can probably. I got to see when Blaze's Blaze is doing a birthday thing for Jensen that we're going to interact with. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, because Andy's getting walk-ons when she leaves work, and she's gonna give me some. So I don't know if we're gonna go to food or no.
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay.
Yeah. And let's see. I think we're going to wrap up on this real quick. I'm going to grab one from Facebook since we haven't done any of those yet. We have Mr. Liam. I'll grab a couple, actually. Liam Shoop says, yep, he's going to get it day one so I can play My Name is Mayo on PS5.
There you go.
And I think he was actually talking about the sequel titled My Name is Mayo 2,
I think I said
but
My Name is
stylized
Mustard.
TOO. And it's going to be salad dressing that has a mayo label on it because it's trying to be mayonnaise.
No.
And that's going to be the plot twist. You tapping on the lid, it says mayo the whole time. You tap a little too hard one time, the label falls off, and you see Miracle Whip.
And that's when you become, that's when you get the platinum.
That's when you get the platinum. Mr. Ken Nay says, I'll buy one at launch, assuming I can find one, which goes back towards some people I think worried, and reasonably so, that if they're going to make less, supply could be constrained, which is what we're seeing right now with the Switch. So I guess anything is possible. You never know what's going to happen. Let's see. A couple more. We have Blake Popes, one of our patrons and friends and my co-host over on our movie podcast, Midweek Matinee. He says, I'll probably hold off a bit unless the launch games are just amazing. And then lastly, I'm going to throw in Mr. Danny Candyman Villalobos. He's one of our patrons as well. He says, I'm still planning to grab it day one unless I cannot find it in my area. I'm still betting $400 to $550 price range for the console. Anything higher would put me off to a later date. And I still stand on what I said last week. I think that there's a big reason, definitely if they're worried about the economy. Mm-hmm. I think there's more of a reason to get the system out into people's hands so that you can get people to get on things like PlayStation Now, PlayStation Plus, buying games, even if it's a single player. Yeah. If you make the price point for the system lower, where you take maybe a little bit of a loss, even if it's $50, you're going to make that up in more long-term revenue and help get the system out in people's hands and kind of incentivize them. I really think we may be looking at a $450. I think beforehand, when the economy was doing well, they might have been looking at a $500. But both consoles, Microsoft and PlayStation, I could see at least right now discussing the potential of a slight loss just to incentivize getting in people's hands quicker.
I could see that. It's going to appease more people that way.
But I also think it depends on how much further this goes on. You know what I mean? It's hard to say. But we're going to go ahead and wrap that up and head into the news. And we're not going to have necessarily a main topic today. We're going to do what we've been doing unless there's just one topic that seems to kick itself out. It's going to read through the news and discuss them at length, or at least as we feel like we have stuff to say about them, and then move along. So the first bit of news, which is not too surprising. It's keeping with Sony's latest modus operandi on both before the pandemic and even during now. They have confirmed they will not be attending Brazil Game Show 2020 this October. Now, the question here for me becomes, will they be at any events?
Why not just cancel everything at this point?
Well, even then, there's a streamed-only version of Gamescom happening later this year, since it normally happens in August. Now, August is not quite as close to the release of the PS5 as like the Brazilian Game Show, and it's not like the Brazil Game Show is something we normally look at, but it just goes to show that if Sony's not attending these things, what is their plan to build interest, hype, and also be able to share information on the upcoming console that close to release if it's not going to be some kind of if they're not going to do something like Gamescom or something bigger, definitely when it's digital only, it's just essentially making a video but getting it put out in front of different eyes. Do they just continue to do drip feed information, which I do think is possible, or do they continue to do something kind of like a state of play that's specifically built around it?
I mean, I think drip feeding or state of play style stuff would be either or is preferred.
Yeah. I think the state of play is a little more, it lowers the barrier of entry because people are more likely to watch a quick video than to sit down and just read an article. And that's becoming
they could still make these announcements in a quick video.
Sure, they could
and drip feed that to us that way.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is that some of them were like the Wired articles; those weren't on videos. If you wanted that in video format, you had to go to someone else. But the best way for Sony to really gauge true interest on their stuff is to make sure that they're the ones getting the views and numbers on their stuff and making it as easy for people to see. And I think little quick videos is a good way to pull that off. So we'll see how that ends up working out. Anything you want to add to that?
No, yeah, we're pretty good on that.
Okay. Next up, Crytek, which we talked about last week on the Crysis remaster, have given a little bit more clarification on the scope of the game, revealing that the game will forego the typical remaster expectation of including all the expansions or DLC, with the game's Warhead expansion not being part of the remaster. Now, this is one of those things where some fans, because of some wording that was put here and there, had also hoped and thought that it might include Crysis 2 and 3 as well, and that even if it's just the first game, that it would include Warhead, because they said it would wrap the entirety of the first game's campaigns with an S, so people think, okay, Warhead would at least be in there. Sadly, that is not the case. Now, I didn't necessarily expect Crysis 2 and 3 in there, even though that would have been cool. The biggest thing for me here is that, to me, this means that this remaster is going to have, since pricing has not been released just yet, this really needs to have a lower entry point. $20 to $30.
Yeah.
And I'm a little worried.
$20, honestly. This game's almost a decade old. Or it is a decade old, isn't it?
It's older.
Yeah, 12 years, right? 2008?
Yeah. So that's where I come in at it. I feel like the only way to justify this realistically, $20. On the Switch, probably $40 because Switch tags.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Just like paying $50 for Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2 remasters.
That's so ridiculous, man. I can't believe it. Speaking of that, though, actually, and I'll go ahead and say, I am still excited for Crysis. I do think it... Last week, you had mentioned that you didn't think it was that good of a game. I do like Crysis, and actually Crysis 1... I like Crysis 2. Crysis 3 is the only one I didn't play. One of the things I liked about Crysis 1, and I even mentioned last week, was that Far Cry was trying to be like it. Yeah. And that's interesting considering that Crytek originally made Far Cry before Far Cry 2, made by an entirely different team, copied it. But I like the open-ended structural level system. I like it to where you can, hey, I'm going to go this way on this big map and be able to flank enemies and do these different things and use the power suit. I like a lot of the same things that I liked about Far Cry 2 being in it. It's like the open-ended challenge that allows you a little bit more freedom, kind of like the Dishonored setup, to where it's like, it's not as good as Dishonored, where Dishonored has a lot of verticality as well, but I like the kind of solve problems in your own fashion thing. Now, Crysis 2 and 3 didn't... Well, Crysis 3 had that, actually, even though I didn't play it. I remember that it returned to like a somewhat bigger open areas. But, yeah, I'm interested to see how that works out. But what I was going to say is in relation to the Switch stuff, the PS4 version of Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, has been patched to include the features that were added into the later released Xbox One and Switch versions, meaning that there is no longer any disparity in features across all versions of the games. Now, here's a big question, Saul. Do you see this potentially happening with other Square Enix releases, like the Dragon Quest XI exclusive features, maybe being, after a period of exclusivity, being brought over to PS4?
I could see that. I didn't know that had any exclusive features.
Well, Dragon Quest XI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Is that because the Definitive Edition came out on Switch and not on PS4?
Yeah, it released much later on Switch.
Yeah.
So, of course, they had extra time to put in extra stuff.
Also, get Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac Age. That's one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. It's worth playing.
I think it's $12 or something, or maybe it's $23.
That's a steal.
I think it's $23 right now on PS4, which we'll also get to that. I guess I'll go ahead and knock that out. On the PSN right now, Sony has the Big in Japan sale going on with up to 50% off of some of the biggest overseas-made favorites and even more off on some of the more niche titles. The sale goes through Friday, May 8th, though sadly, and this is a big point of contention for me, does not include many Vita titles, just 2, and it also does not include Vita versions of PS4 titles that are on sale, such as World of Final Fantasy. So since I've been playing so much Final Fantasy lately, and I liked the kind of premise for World of Final Fantasy, I've been debating buying it for Vita. It gives me something to play on it, and I think I would like that style of game more handheld anyway.
Yeah.
So for me, double win. And I wouldn't buy it on Switch right now, partially because if I love it, I'd like to platinum it, potentially. Yeah. But also, Hannah has been glued to the Switch. It's essentially hers. I don't care. But
Animal Crossing.
She loves Animal Crossing. So, but with that, my big point of contention comes here is I didn't agree, but I can at least understand Sony bowing out of supporting new titles to the Vita as long ago as they did. But just because you're not supporting the Vita with your own releases and maybe updates or whatever you want to say, and not even supporting Vita with new cartridges anymore. You can't, they finished Vita production of Vita cartridges. That does not mean that you cannot support the system with things like sales. Why would a big in Japan sell when the Vita was biggest in Japan and has a ton of Japanese made games that made their way over here? Why would you not include those versions in these sales?
I think it's just furthermore evidence of Sony just really trying to be done with the Vita.
But it also makes me wonder how much of it is up to the publishers. And if so, shame. Because I feel like Sony could be like, hey, look, Square, you're putting World of Final Fantasy on sale for $12.39 for the PS4 version. But the Vita version is going to be not on sale for $40 still.
Yeah.
Is it Square trying to get more money out of the porting it to Vita? Because honestly, you'd get more money out of getting people to buy either version. You already ported it to Vita. Now it's just about making as much money as you can. If that means putting it on sale for $12.39 when you have the PS4 version, or even $15 for the PS Vita version and $12.99 for the PS4 version, something.
Yeah.
Because I would have bought. I ended up buying it from Amazon brand new for $20, and honestly, I'd rather have it physical anyway. If I end up not liking it, I can sell it.
That's true.
But my point being, I would have literally bought it and downloaded it right now and been playing it later today probably. Probably not. I'm gonna play Crisis Core, but my point stands that it just bums me out. And playing the Vita as much as I have lately, it just makes me want more Vita and another handheld from Sony. Sad days. Is what it is. Move back up to what I had skipped over. For those who've been on the lookout, an early third-party PS exclusive for both PS5 and PS4 has been shown in the way of Quantum Error, which is a horror first-person shooter being developed by Team Kill Media. A trailer released back in March teased the game, but they've come out and discussed it more since then. So the game is being built in Unreal Engine with PS5 as the target console. They will only begin optimizing for the PS4 once they are much closer to release. So one of the things I like about this, and I don't necessarily know if it's been documented or you can tell, but when the PS4 was coming, I felt like a vast majority of the games that were cross-gen, definitely the ones on launch day that were cross-gen, were really just PS3 titles that were just, their native resolution was upped.
We talked about that before. Like Thief specifically was one of those that was just really bad.
Well, no, Thief, honestly, of all the ones I played because Thief came later. It wasn't a launch game.
Was it not? It was a launch window.
It was like first 3 months.
Yeah.
But Thief, to me,
Call of Duty Ghost.
I felt like there was more of a jump from that than something like Call of Duty Ghost.
Yeah.
Where really Call of Duty Ghost did not look any better besides 1080p
right
on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And I guess maybe the power jump here is kind of seemingly more. Definitely not even necessarily raw power, but speed and stuff like that you can do was more than what you had from PS3 to PS4. So maybe that's part of it. But to me, it's just like the developers are looking at it from a standpoint of, since backwards compatibility is there anyway, there's no reason not to deal with this. We're going to aim for PS5 first. Make the game exactly how we'd want it on PS5, and only then start optimizing for the PS4 version.
Yeah.
So instead of doing what we've worried about with Xbox's stance that every Series X game is still going to play on the base model Xbox One, that's so much of a disparity that you have to look at this and say the game almost has to be designed at that point with this in mind so that you don't do something that's too broad, right? Because now you have hard drive speeds that are going to be crazy and that can make, and your memory bandwidth is going to happen in such a different way that you can load the world in vastly different. But what happens if you end up trying to put that on on the other thing? Well, either one of two things. If you come back later, you're going to have to add load screens. Do you want the game to be that different between the games, or do you want it to feel like you're playing the same game on Xbox One? The only difference is the graphical and general visual experience on the Series X. That becomes a problem. But if you make it for the target system first and then drop it, like what happens with The Witcher 3, when it gets ported down to Switch by a completely different company, obviously all they're worried about, and of course this happened with PC, to be fair, for The Witcher 3, but The Witcher 3 had to be a little pulled back to work on consoles, and the PC version suffered a little bit because of that.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that you can't put something on something weaker without it having some kind of an effect, but the minimal effect that you can have, the better.
That's true, yeah, and I agree. Like if we're gonna get a port of any kind of, or even just a next gen crossover game, try to keep things like that minimal, even if you're trying to show off new stuff, because it makes a parity between those two. Just kind of how what you're talking about with Final Fantasy 12. There's a parity. There should be that kind of parity in a game. That should have been day one. Bring
it back to what you were talking about, Thief. I think the one thing that would have made Thief feel really next gen, that felt very non-next gen on the PS4 version, was load screens between every level when there was no real need. So what would happen is you'd get to the end of a level, and then you'd go out a window. And even though the next part of the game you're about to be playing was just on the side of the world, the other side of that window, you had to load into it.
Well, and what I will say
I hated that.
One of the coolest mods that I have ever played with Skyrim is that there is no loading screens.
Between the city?
Yeah. It's just so cool to have one of those big doors.
And you know what's crazy about that? Is I know that was probably just to make sure that you didn't have problems. I think the consoles probably could have handled it, but it was like, hey, on the off chance that they couldn't have, let's pull back. Because do you remember in Skyrim when you're playing, there was parts where you could accidentally lump in under the map, and you could actually get outside of the cities and be underneath the rest of the open world, and you could see everything. You just be under it.
I never saw that, no.
Yeah, it was a big exploit that people used to get gold and stuff, because what would happen is the way that Skyrim's systems are set up.
I did that because I think in not Solitude, where is it at? There's a city that you can go to a rock behind this well, and like if you go to the
it's Winterhold.
No.
Or Windhelm, whatever. It's one of the icy cities. You can do that.
And you go to like a corner of a rock, and you can hit X to go to the stash that is that shop's inventory.
No, there's that one, but this other one is like when you're in Whiterun in Skyrim, you can go up and you can actually access by doing some weird jumping around and falling through certain areas. You can access like the blacksmith, the one that's up in the top in the
Solitude.
No, the one it's in Whiterun. There's two blacksmiths. You know, there's the one that's up on the peak, and then there's the one that's as soon as you get into the city.
Right.
You can go to the one that's up by the peak, and you can get under and you can get into his box, and it's just his inventory.
Yeah.
Every NPC that had an inventory, their inventory was tied to a chest,
and it's hidden in the world.
And it's hidden in the world, so you could jump underneath and do that. But yeah, it's interesting. That would have. Because I know when I watched you do it, I said, "Whoa!" And actually, I meant to ask, does that exist on the Xbox One version? Because you did the Xbox One version modded, but I didn't know if you ever did that.
Maybe. I would honestly not be surprised if that was on the PS4 version too, because it's not using any new assets.
Yeah, it's just using extra processing.
I mean, even then, like it didn't do anything to my PC at all.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't know.
That's my big hope for next gen is minimal load windows.
I think we'll get that too.
There was an article actually about the Outer Worlds. I always have to double check and make sure I don't accidentally say the Outer Wilds.
Yeah.
Even more funny, did you see that the writer for the Outer Wilds was hired by Obsidian to be the writer on the Outer Worlds too?
That's just a Christopher Nolan level of Inception.
But they talked about, and I remember one of the things that felt kind of dated about the Outer Worlds was that there was a lot of load windows. And they talked about their original goal for the game was much bigger areas, but the current consoles for them to be as populated as they were.
Yeah.
And I will give them credit. They may have had smaller areas, but they were pretty densely populated with fauna and stuff.
I love that game.
But yeah, the game was apparently meant to be a whole lot bigger. And that was one of the things that always got me. Like, why am I have to load here? Why am I having to load here?
Mm-hmm.
Next gen, I want such minimal loading that it just
How were the load times on PS4?
For the Outer Worlds?
Yeah.
All right. Not terrible.
I'll say for Xbox,
great.
they were like 10 seconds or less.
I'd say they were probably 12 to 14 seconds if I can remember. So
that's not bad.
Not bad at all.
There's so many of them, they all add up.
And did you play on the One X?
Yeah,
right.
Because it was free. It's in Games Pass.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if you played on PC or the One X after you got your One.
No, but it's coming to Switch. I might be interested in that.
Oh, it still hasn't released for Switch yet. I forget that because they've announced for Switch forever ago.
It got pushed back for some reason.
Because of the Switch.
Probably so.
Only so much you can do. All right, let's see. The next thing up, Predator Hunting Grounds, the PS4 console exclusive that just released for all, was having similar issues to those faced in the beta, with players having to wait upwards of 30 minutes for matches to start due to matchmaking issues. Developer Ilphonic released a hotfix today that aims to fix the issue as well as iron out a few other small issues as well. And I noticed I put as well twice. My bad. This is one of those things where it's technically an exclusive, but why do online games release in this fashion?
I don't know.
And why does it happen with only online games all the time?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, here's a good example. Call of Duty is it has a single player storyline, but a lot of people who buy it day one are playing online, and they don't have these problems.
No, because Call of Duty is a good developer. The Call of Duty developer plans enough for this.
Sure, I think it's also budget. If I'm not lying, I mean, you got to think about how much money Call of Duty brings in, and they know it's for the multiplayer aspect. So you better have excess of servers.
Any of these weird asymmetrical games, I don't like these games that much, and I think any of these, they always just say like they're not high quality at all.
Oh, shout out something I figured out the other day and learned. Apparently, Crysis 3. So 2013, if I'm remembering correctly, Crysis 3 it was either Crysis 2 or Crysis 3, had a multiplayer mode called Predators or something like that, to where it was
some invisible ones versus
where it was a bunch of non-mech suit people, and then one person with the smart suit.
I'm pretty sure it was 3.
Yeah,
because 3, like I said last episode, 3 actually had somewhat fun multiplayer.
Yeah. So it's funny, we were talking about, was one of the earliest examples we remember being an entire game, at least, was, of course, Turtle Rock Studios' Evolve. But that idea's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Even, actually, go further back.
Go to zombies in Halo.
Dead Space 2.
Halo had zombies, where it was literally like people infecting other people.
Yeah, that one was weird, because it starts off one way.
It's still asymmetrical.
Yeah, it's still asymmetrical, because it starts off one way and then builds around the other.
Yeah.
That's even cooler in a weird way.
It is. I'm going to go make sure my car's locked because your dogs are barking for no apparent reason. And I can't remember I don't think I locked my car.
Okay, go ahead.
Somebody's there robbing my stuff.
I will just bide some time while we're doing this. And actually, I'll go ahead and say this. Oh, well, there's one piece of news before that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The jacket I bought already.
You bought that jacket? I hope you did.
Hell no, I didn't buy the jacket.
For the ludicrous price of just under $1,900, at least in USD, you can get the styling and profiling. You can get 2 styling and profiling and your very own timefall-proof jacket to flex your love for Death Stranding. The stranger thing is that the jacket is no more than just a variant of an existing jacket, with a few color changes, a few patches, and lastly, some print to give it the Fictional Bridges branding, which is just ridiculous. $1,900 for, it's from the company acronym, which does like urban tech wear or whatever they want to call themselves. Their stuff is already expensive, but they happen to be friends with Kojima, so they got together and made this jacket, and there's a picture of Kojima wearing one. I just find it so weird. And this is something that happened in Final Fantasy 15 as well, where clothing companies that apparently helped kind of do the designs and inspired the designs within the games themselves would make real versions of the clothes found within the game, but they'd be ridiculously priced. It begs the question of who's it for, at least to me. But it is what it is. Saul, do you remember in Final Fantasy 15 that the characters were all in like somewhat leather clothing and stuff that was designed by a real world company that was put into the game, and then the real world clothing company? Oh, the whole game was full of advertisement.
Yeah.
Hey, as much as I hated it, I understand that they were trying to make back years and years of it being a vaporware title that was stuck in development hell. So This is what I'll say. I'm glad that it clearly wasn't just Square being fully scummy, because Final Fantasy VII did not have a single piece of real world advertising in it.
No, I don't think it did. I don't think it did, actually.
I really think that was, but either way, the clothing for Final Fantasy 15, I remember when they were talking about it, they're like, hey, these clothes will be available to purchase in real life. Is that cool? Yeah, but they're all for like $1,200 per piece of clothing. Who wants to wear that?
I really like the design of techwear. I don't know if you've seen some designs of techwear, but it's kind of what Final Weapon wants their clothing on to be.
Yeah.
But everything that is techwear is expensive.
Shout out to Final Weapon, by the way. That's our news partners that we sometimes get some more news stuff, and we like to share their stuff. They're good workers.
Like, let me show you this jacket. Tell me you wouldn't want to wear this jacket. This jacket looks so nice. Oops. Oh my goodness, I hate trackpads. But this jacket right here, would you wear that jacket if you had it?
Not really. It's not my style, if I'm being honest.
You don't like that windbreaker style?
I don't like jackets like that.
Oh, it's actually leather.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
$120.
And it's thick. I don't like thick jackets. Do you notice the jacket I wear 90% of the time is that one that's black with a little bit of
Would you wear that one?
Too thick looking still.
Well, like
it looks cool, I guess. I may wear it, but I may wear it for looks, but I'd never wear it otherwise because of heat. I don't like being hot. My favorite jacket is you can see through it. You just Just hold it taut and see through it. And I love that. Anyway, last thing we're going to talk about is the recent heatsink patent that was filed by Sony, or unearthed from something filed by Sony a while back. And it has the internet excited about the potential cooling solutions for the PS5. Now, here's the thing.
I don't know why.
I think what it is that...
This is not special in any real way.
So this is what I'm saying. I think for a lot of people, this is based off of whether or not they think the PlayStation 5 is going to go for a tower design or not.
Which is that is a dumb reason to be excited about this, because that's not gonna. This is a very classic style of cooling, mm-hmm. and we have that in the PS5 already. What is going to be more efficient of this based on this patent? What's more efficient than this to not make my PS5 not sound like a turbojet engine like my PS4 does?
Okay, so this is actually a lot closer to what's in, and I say closer. It's still not the exact thing. This is a lot closer to what Xbox did in the One X.
Where's the reservoir at? Is it this?
Well, there's more to it than this, but if you actually read the whole thing, it explains a little bit of it.
I just don't get it.
Now, these are just renders that someone did of how the cooling is going to work, and you can actually see a little bit of it in here. But with all that being said, what's happening here is I think that people are excited about this. Two things happens here. I think this goes back to reinforce the fact that any bit of information that comes out that could even potentially mean that, this might be for the PS5, blows up.
Yes. Which is why we're doing this topic.
I think that's the biggest aspect about this. Yeah. That's the biggest aspect of this, is that it goes to show that even people who don't really understand tech are looking at this and going, oh yeah, great, this is so cool. But I really think the bigger factor here, and I think this even for myself, and I understand, I personally don't want Sony to go with the tower. Now, I've said it a million times. If they go with a tower design, I'm still buying it. I don't care that much.
So something weird about this render is that it's upside down. I realize that's not a water block. That's where the CPU. That's what this thermal paste goes here, and then it goes upside down on top of the CPU. And the heatsink is up. Right? How does that heatsink sit on the CPU?
Yeah, I saw that too, but it's also weird because this looks like teeth, but it's hard to say if it's actual teeth or if... And that's the thing about renders, people. One of the things I don't like is when people try and render things out.
Because it could be incorrect.
They don't always get it right.
Yeah, but even then...
When you're looking at the patent, it's hard to tell. Is this the teeth side? Or if you flip this upside down, is this the vent side the air moves through?
Well, what I got from this blueprint is that it's going to be... This is the very top. This is going to be cooling coils. This is going to be where the CPU is, and this is the CPU here, the 5C. The 5D is maybe a very small liquid reservoir.
Look, for anybody that cares, we'll go ahead and read this. So we're looking at an article that Push Square put out. So it says... it goes on to explain how the cooling system will operate. Quote, a heatsink is disposed on a lower surface of a circuit board. The circuit board has through holes that penetrate the circuit board in an area where an integrated circuit apparatus is disposed. Heat conduction paths are provided in the through holes, which is not what the PlayStation has right now.
No.
The heat conduction paths connect the integrated circuit apparatus and the heatsink. This structure allows for disposition of a component different from the heatsink on the same side as the integrated circuit apparatus, thus ensuring a higher degree of freedom in the component layout. So I think what this is and why I think people, again, are looking at this, the way that this is worded out is that this is something that, again, is going towards more of what the One X was aiming to do, letting it to be where you have more freedom of where you can put your components around it and deal with that, and that way you can keep your form factor low but still actually have better heating than what was in, or better heat dissipation and better cooling in general than what you had in the launch model Xbox One and the PS4, right? This is something that's more about bringing your size down but giving you actually overall more cooling by using special chambers. Now this sounds weird. This is actually not that different. I know. I only know this because I recently did this. This is not that different than the way that automatic transmissions, cool their fluid. That goes through them. Now, of course, that's fluid that literally pushes through these, but this is where you use...
How hot does that fluid get, do you know?
Really, really hot. Whenever it's actually going. And if you are out of fluid, the heat will actually bind up the transmission and burn it out, stuff like that. But my point being is that this is an idea that's been around for a while. If you can get things, and in this case, what's really happening is that you want the air to act as if it were a fluid. You want the air to be forced down in these holes, have another path to travel, so that too much heat doesn't get built up in one spot. You're creating paths at which you want this air to flow through, is what I'm picking up from what this is acting like and saying. So to me, I like that, and you could still And the one thing about this patent is I don't think it goes on to say extra, because technically if they wanted to do vapor cooling on top of this, they could. I think this is specifically what's on the processor side. And then I think everything else is kind of like a phone. The vapor cooling chamber doesn't actually exist on the processor. It's actually separate.
It's a copper pipe laid into the actual motherboard.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with that, I think there's a lot of ways that they can do this. But the bigger thing I think to note here is that as interesting as this could be to certain people,
it could be completely fake.
This has, it's not that it's fake. It's a real patent, but it may not be what's in the PlayStation.
Well, yeah. I mean, it could be a patent that is just made to have been made. This could not have anything to do with anything at all.
Yeah, because they may have patented every cooling idea they went through.
Could be the new cooling patent for the PS Vita 2. We don't know.
I knew you were about to say that. But either way, I think that the bigger drawing between this, like I said, the two takeaways from this is just that any bit of information that gets put out, even if it's not officially through Sony, this is just a patent by Sony, people are lapping it up. And I think the secondary thing is this speaks a lot. I think that people read that, just like I was talking about, and freedom of component layout is all about people going, okay, well, that gives you the ability to bring your size down. Excuse me.
Like in a PS Vita 2 shell.
But really, I mean, I know so many people who are just like me, and I know some people who are even further down the line than me that if it's a tower, they really don't want it, or they are, as far as they're concerned, buying it is going to force them to have to buy a whole new entertainment system, so they would wait. I've heard a couple people say, my entertainment system is not set up to hold this kind of style of thing. I'd have to wait until eventually a slim model may have come, a smaller model comes out, if I don't want to have to spend the extra money to replace my entire setup. And I get it. It's extra money that you feel like you shouldn't have to go, because all TV things are set up and designed in a way that goes towards DVD players, VHS players. Depending on how old it is, every set-top box you've ever dealt with has always been a rather thick, but still a more elongated rectangle than something that comes up as just a cube.
I will say, though, that my entertainment system, I won't have to worry about that at home.
Because you don't have a real entertainment system. You have a desk like I do.
My living room.
Yeah.
My living room actually has the cutouts for everything are actually about that thick a piece, and then there's an actual cube on one side.
On one side,
now, that's Evie's door to get in her bedroom. Yeah. She sleeps behind the TV.
So you could put it in that one. You wouldn't be able to put it in the other two, but still.
I could lay it down.
Well, I thought and maybe I'm wrong, I thought on the Xbox thing that they had a thing showing that you weren't supposed to turn it on its side.
I thought I've not heard that.
Well, and I may be conflating, though I don't think I am. I may be conflating or accidentally assuming and thinking I heard it as news. I don't know if you remember, the launch model Xbox you weren't supposed to put up on its side.
No, I do remember that.
Or you weren't supposed to put it flat, one of the two. It was something ridiculous. I was like, why can't you do either?
But from what I've seen of the Xbox One Series X, is that it's not much wider than a controller.
Yeah.
And I would be hard-pressed to find entertainment systems that I'm looking for around here that I would buy something that has a slot that's even less than that. Even when I'm shopping for not with this in my mind.
So like me and you, right? Let's just kind of put this in perspective of what's really going to happen for me and you. It would realistically go on our desktops.
Yeah, it's something
because we have desks that we use as technically entertainment systems.
I really dig the Xbox Series X style because it takes up less of a footprint on my desk. It'll go in a corner over there where my Xbox One X is now.
Now for me, and it doesn't affect me, it would require me, it depends, right? It depends on what I do with my existing consoles, because I always keep my consoles. And I'm going to keep these. There's no reason for me to sell either of these because they're too special.
Either or.
The PS3 I just kept because, again, special. Backwards compatible, 4 USB ports, memory card readers. There's no reason not to keep it and keep it plugged in, because I still like to play a good amount of PS3 games occasionally. And I just like keeping the Vita. I don't normally get rid of stuff, but I don't normally keep it on display either. The PS3 is this...
A PS3.
I guess that's just, I keep it there because I play it occasionally. Yeah. I mean, it's not that I play it often, but I play it enough, I think, to warrant it already being hooked up. I would hate to have to pull that out and hook it up every time I wanted to play it.
Yeah, that'd be annoying.
So my thing is I would really love for the PS5 to be something that I could set up and just stand up on its side and it be thin and not take up much room, and it fit in with the current design I have for all my consoles. But if it's a cube, I am going to have to completely rearrange how I do my stuff. It's not going to keep me from buying it.
Yeah.
But I understand why some people are on this, if it's a tower, I'm either not going to buy it or I'm going to just wait until they hopefully make one that's smaller. 2 years, probably, realistically, if you really think about how that normally goes.
Yeah, I'd say two and a half.
It was 2 years for them to make a PS4 Slim, if I remember correctly.
What was it? They made a Series S.
Same, a little bit after, I think, actually.
Or the Xbox One S.
The Xbox One S. I think it was a little bit after the PlayStation came out with the Slim.
Okay.
So, but my point being is, This is weird. I mean, it's cool. It's interesting. And I actually, and again, this speaks, I think, so much to how different these consoles are going to be. I think that the fact that Sony, even if it's just from what we're seeing from a potential setup that's not even going to be in the PS5, it goes to show that Sony has been looking at, well, how do we try and introduce new, interesting cooling ways that lets us keep the form factor that we like and that other people like. And to me, I like that. I like that they're so different because the PS4 and the Xbox One were very similar across the board. They were both loud. They both had poor cooling. And up until you got to the One X, they both had very equally, like all their cooling systems are very similar. Now, the One X, I think, was a huge upgrade from the PS4 Pro. And that's awesome.
Nowhere near
I'm glad
loud.
that they were so different. Also, I'm glad that I think that the One X probably pushes Sony to think more about, like, with this next console, what are we going to do to try and
competition
be that?
drives ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Innovation.
So, and if the Xbox's solution to keep everything cool is to build a big tower that happens to have the double aspect of at least making their design unique for a console, if not divisive, still unique.
Well, I mean, and there's a reason why you see high-end PCs with liquid cooling. It's not because they're doing it for aesthetics or anything. It's because it actually works for what they're running.
Yeah. And even why you see a computer tower in general, the computer tower is set up the way it is because the more air you can move through a system, the more hot air you can get out.
Yes.
So even without liquid cooling, you just
and not even that. Not all high-end systems need liquid cooling.
Have they confirmed that One X is Series X is going to be liquid cooled?
It's like that weird vapor liquid
vapor
or something.
Cooled.
I watched the video, but I forgot. It's something.
Yeah. Either way, it'll be interesting to see. If y'all remember, Mark Cerny said that they are going to do a teardown of the PS5, and that's when they're going to go into
May.
That's when they're going to go into what the cooling solution is.
Get us that in May. But
so we will see.
Community's take a look at these blueprints. Tell us what you think.
I think my community's take is going to be actually a little simpler.
Go ahead.
Would you be okay with Sony taking on a tower design, or do you want more of a flat traditional console design?
Tower design or no tower design. That simple. Because
that's going to be... I've talked to some people about it, and I know what some people like Josh Ayers, our friend and patron and dude in the Discord, I know how he feels about it. I've got some local friends that I've talked to about it, and it's interesting not only seeing what their opinion is, but why their opinion is that.
Yeah.
And that's a big... So I guess, which one do you prefer and why is the real question. So I'll get that put out... I've been debating doing more of the community's take later in the week so that people see it closer to the episode and it gets a little more interaction. But I don't know. I guess I'll go ahead and ask that if you hear this and care to think about it and reach out to us through Discord, Twitter, or whatever. Would you like me putting the reminder out on Wednesday? Does it give you more time to kind of do it, or does putting it out Wednesday interrupt with you on the work week and get it to where you don't even end up seeing it and forget to be part of it?
Because we record on Sundays, we can do this on Friday
and that's what I did. That's what I did this time.
Yeah,
Friday I got off work and we had a lot. So,
yeah. Hey guys, if you liked the video, give us a like, and if you are on a podcast service that supports reviews, think about giving us a review, even if it has stuff in there you want us to fix or change. All critique is good critique.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, if you would really enjoy us and you think we're share-worthy, tell a friend about us. Tell somebody who likes gaming, who likes to hear people talk about PlayStation and other systems in relation to the PlayStation.
We did just talk a lot about Xbox.
We did. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting to know. And don't forget, we upload every single episode every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, noon Central time. I don't know why I almost said standard there. And you can catch us in video format on YouTube if you want to see our pretty faces. If you really, really love our content, you can become a Patreon over there at patreon.com/Nartech, and you can hear Brett lively read out all of your names with his lovely voice.
I think I may have actually forgotten to add Kevin Bacon Bits.
What a shame.
If not, special patron shout out to Kevin Bacon Bits, but I may have added it.
Yeah, we're going to say his name again.
If it's on there, you get it twice. Otherwise, I will change it right now. So, all right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks to our patrons, Josh Jarrell, Matthew Green, my name is Dan, Luke Bartolomeo, Sean Santarud, Funk Turkey, Danny Villalobos, Corey Hickerson, Blake Popst, Shadowist, Steven Salazar, The Stonard, Travis Below, Eduardo Palomino, Stefan Swanlin, Constantly Kenny, Solitary Red, Chris Figs, Brian, Donovan Williams, William Digital Spooker, Derek Porter, Josh Ayers, Brandon Edwards, Sean One Neo, Tyler Powers, El Chabib, and of course, we're going to go ahead, even though I didn't add it on there, and throw up Dennis, Mr. Kevin Bacon Bits. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Nartech. Thanks.